Hey everybody, Kevin here from ChangeWorks Interactive. Welcome back. Today I have a very interesting guest. Her name is Michelle Stanford. And let me tell you about Michelle. She is a strategy consultant. She's also, in her past life, has been a senior advisor. She's an Anglican minister, and she is a relationship coach. So she wears a lot of hats. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin.
Michelle, I have so many questions that I want to ask you, and I know we had a chance to talk about some of the topics that were, kind of near and dear to, I guess, both of our hearts. And we both have families, we both have kids. There's some things that that we've struggled with as families, and discussed that as well. But really, you've done a lot in your career. You've done a lot. You've got a big span of things that you've done, and a lot of roles that you've had. Maybe what you could talk to our listeners about is an explanation of where you started and kind of where you got to, right?
Yeah, my grandmother used to say, "A rolling stone gathers no moss."
I remember
and
that
maybe,
one.
maybe that was my. I didn't have a strategy. I think I a lot of times I made decisions about where I would go career-wise and what I would do or study based on what I was good at, or what people told me I was good at.
Yeah.
So I was definitely a science nerd. I have an undergrad in biochemistry from Western, and then I wanted to go into teaching, and I thought I wanted to teach high school kids until I got into it before going to teachers college, and realized that I'd be much happier teaching people who want to learn.
Yeah.
So I decided, because my marks were highest in business, I would go pursue an MBA, do my PhD, become a prof in marketing. But I got lured away by the very big salaries that come with what's called management consulting. We don't talk about it a lot in Canada, but it's, definitely, if you go to business school, either you want to be an iBanker or you want to be a management consultant if you're,
Okay.
really keen to get out there and maximize, what's available to you financially. So I did that, but before I did that, I worked in healthcare, I worked in cardiac care, and I think always the theme is this relentless desire to help people. So with whatever gifts or tools or education I have, how can I help people?
Yeah.
So I go and be a management consultant, but it's awesome, and I do great. I work in healthcare, I work in the US, I fly back and forth every week. So that takes me to sort of my late 30s, 3 kids, I'm done. So I become an executive. We moved to the States, and it's not enough. And I had a boss's boss give me a book called When All You Ever Wanted Isn't Enough. And it's by a Jewish rabbi. So I read that book and I say, I think I should go. So this is what I say: I think I should be VP of Sales and Marketing for God and the love He has for people.
Yeah.
Well, then I mistakenly, a little bit of a wrong turn, I became an Anglican priest, and I should have stayed as just a chaplain. Not just, but my path in life should have been to stay with my specialization in seminary and be a chaplain. I worked in sick kids as a chaplain. I went into the church as an institution for full-time for 4 or 5 years. And then at the same time, I began to explore the individual and the family unit. And so I became a certified spiritual director, and I started working with couples who wanted a little bit of a spiritual basis to their conversation, but also wanted to be more holistic. So I did that. I went back into corporate several times over the last 10 years because my former husband didn't have a job, so I had a good resume, so off I went.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so then flash forward to maybe 7 or 8 years ago, 90%, so 11 out of 12 of my closest friends had gone through divorce in the last 7 years prior to that. And somebody turned to me and said, when 3 of them were gathered at a girls' weekend, this is what you should do, right? You're a strategist, you're a negotiator, you care about people, you have like the coaching.
Yeah, you're going to be good at this.
You have the, the spiritual direction, and the chaplain stuff is all about, feelings and emotions and stuff that comes up for you and behaviors. So I went and became certified as a divorce coach. However, it was too negative for me.
I know when we talked last, we were talking about young men, and we were talking about, okay, we don't maybe you could help me with that understanding too, Michelle, because I see a lot in my practice as well, and I see these young women are kind of moving along. There might be times when things are tough, but young men aren't launching. They're not moving forward, and that goes back. You mentioned Jordan Peterson. He's got some views on that as well, but maybe you do as well. Why is it that our young men can't seem to launch? And if you agree with that, which I think you will, what's going to help?
So
I know it's a big question.
Well, first I'll preface by saying there are some very well informed by the data, the literature, and relationships with professionals. People like the British guy Richard Reeves, who wrote a book in 2022 that for some reason never hit until Obama was out of office. And there's a bit of a correlation because anyway, it's all related, but I'll come back. So him and Scott Galloway, in my mind, have the best view on the totality of the issue. And I was with many, many friends 5 years ago and then 10 years ago. So from 10 to 5 years ago, talking about the whole launching issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's bigger than that. I think it's huge and it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
And we have to preface any conversation where we talk about, I guess the word I'll use is the demise of the young male, the male under 30 right now. The demise of the male is a reality that is not caused by the equality, the achievement, and the successes of the female cohort. It's not that the two things can't exist at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? They are existing. We don't want to go back. We don't want to, take away the things that have allowed women to be in the positions they are.
Yeah.
However, so, it's back like what I said about the 3Ds. Like, what is the actual reality? Well, the reality is, and some of these are U.S. statistics, but, the majority of, there are more women under 30 own a single family house. Women under 30 in urban centers make more money. 60% of universities are filled with women. Women, the top performers in high school graduating are women. So there are all kinds of confluence of factors. Now that we've fixed some of the education system in that we allow women and encourage women to take science courses and math courses, right, which would be a pathway to higher jobs and analytical thinking and other professional positions. Well, now we allow women and men to do that, but men aren't graduating from high school at the level women are. They're not going to university. There aren't these high-paying, more physical labor jobs that we need the men to be doing because they are stronger and they are bigger and they do have more endurance. So you have the school environment. You have a home or life environment where their dad, so you and I, we have children, men under 30, sons under 30, their fathers are the first in their generation where their partner, their wife, the mother, is also working full time. Right? We are only 2 generations removed from women not being able to vote, not being able to drive unless their husband. They can't open a business bank account.
It seems archaic.
So we're not that far apart. It's not as if what happens in your telomeres in your brain and how we learn things and how we adapt. We've completely shifted the environment in which being a successful male, a valued male, has completely changed.
Yeah.
My grandmother, and to a large degree my mother, needed my dad or my grandfather for his economic stability.
Yes.
Because they didn't work, they weren't educated, they didn't have any other options. So you're a 30-year-old male. I have 2 daughters in their 20s, and the one that's been single, she and her cohort are not the least bit interested in dating anyone their age.
Yeah.
So a men in their 30s is not only are they dating less, but the women that are dating their age are dating men that are older because they have more economic and more, there's another word for it, like emotional stability that says, okay, there's more equity in this relationship overall.
Right.
I think it was Scott Galloway that talked about women doing the math. Mm-hmm. Like I as a woman, in my 20s, I'm more educated, I'm making more money, I own more assets. So then you're a man, and how do you deal with that?
And I think that leaves these young guys saying, why bother?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
bother? Why bother? I'm going to stay in my basement, my parents'
That's
basement,
exactly it.
and smoke weed and play video games
Yeah.
or surf porn.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of blame to be put in corporations.
Yeah.
So they say that women in their 30s who are doing the math and saying, I'm going to fill my relationship void with my friendships.
Yeah.
And the data will show that the men will do exactly what you're saying. They will fill the void, not with friendships and not with bettering themselves and not with nurturing themselves, but continuing to self-isolate.
You sent me a link to a very interesting book on young women, and I want to get this right. It's called Untangled, Guiding Teenage Girls Through the 7 Transitions into Adulthood by Lisa D'Amour. Why was that book for you so impactful? Because I know you've recommended that to a number of different people.
I've never been a book club person,
Yeah.
and I think I've probably purchased the book maybe 15 times for people and have had numerous conversations.
Yeah.
So for context, the book would have came out maybe 2014, 15-ish, maybe a little bit later than that. And whenever I had a tool for being a parent, it always had to be scientifically based, not flavor of the month, not, some, what was that, Dr. Spock, children should be seen and not heard, like whatever, any of that. So this woman her book is so powerful because the book was written for parents of young women because of, prior to this sort of shift in the balance of power from women maturing better, which is another topic I didn't address, but the women are maturing better and they're now doing better academically and employment.
Yeah.
But before that, there were all kinds of things not working well for them. So the author wrote it because she worked in a private girls' school, had a practice that dealt with girls, and is an academic.
Yeah.
So the 7 transitions into adulthood, not linear and not gender-based, like not just for women. But in her book, what was so powerful was each of the phases of normal adolescent transition into adulthood, where you hand in your assignments on time, you complete your work, you follow up on job applications. Like my friend used to say to me when we had 15-year-old sons that were driving us crazy, it is not our job to raise a 15-year-old boy. It is our job to raise an adult male.
Right. Right.
And I'd be okay.
So
still on.
it's when the kid launches. Have I raised an independent individual that's going to be able to manage everything ahead of them?
Yeah.
Right.
So in her book, what is so powerful is she writes the academic, scientific knowledge we have about the development of a human being into the best version of themselves that they can be. Right. Mental health, physical health, contribution to society, happiness, joy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the net. That's what every parent wants. And so in each phase, she would talk about that phase. She would give, situations anonymized with parents and children, struggling or cases that she had. But at the very back, she would have 2 pages. If this phase is offside for you, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And this book in our household is dog-eared in certain phases for 2 different, I was reading it when my son was a bit older, but for my 2 daughters that I came back to on a regular basis. And I feel as if we need the same kind of book for parents of boys or men under 30. Because it is talked about in every social circle. I was at hockey last night, it was talked about. I was at a girls' weekend, and 9 of the 12 women that I was with were talking about their sons just not thriving.
Well, I know a good person that could probably write that book. She's sitting across the table from me, so good luck with that.
I thought you say yourself.
No. This you're right in tune
Yeah.
with this stuff. Let's say I'm a young person, Michelle. Switch gears a little bit, and let's say I'm a young person, and I am entering this is my first job, my first real job, right? And I want to keep some things in mind. And given your experience of somebody that is kind of walking into this first real job, what are some of the things or really things that you would advise that somebody does consciously, that they really make a plan about, I want to make sure that I do this during my first job. What would you advise?
Right on. I like one of the things you said to me, we were talking earlier about, what should I keep in mind? Like one part of it. And the other is, a successful outcome.
Yeah.
So the two things go together. And one of the first things I would say, and it takes a little bit of explaining, but this is me talking to, a young person.
Yeah.
So I've got, 2 kids launching new careers. You need to promote yourself. And I don't mean promote yourself on the internet like an influencer. I mean, you need to promote yourself. Who you are in your, contribution to society, in your work vocation. You're no longer a student intern or a camp counselor. You are a, marketing associate. So promote yourself. So I'm a marketing associate. So in your own mind, if you have promoted yourself in your own mind to a marketing associate, what is it that is the successful outcome for yourself? And so you talked about the word I would say. So one is promote yourself. The second thing I would say is you have to follow plan the work the plan. And I don't mean the day-to-day deliverables or the project your boss has you working on, but you have to plan for your own career, what it is that is a successful outcome. And kids go, oh my gosh, I don't know what I want to be. I don't even know if I like this job.
Yeah.
So
this is the new economy. This is not the old economy. This is the new economy. So I think that's bang on.
And it could be. So what do I want? What is a successful outcome for me?
Yeah.
So I was talking to my son yesterday. He took a bigger job, moved to Canmore, just got promoted. He's only been there like 3 or 4 months.
Yep. Awesome.
He's like, okay. This is great because I want this 2 years from now. I'm like, okay, so, you want this 2 years from now. So where's the gap? Where's the gap in your skills, like the actual skills you have, in your ability, and thirdly, in your understanding of what that actually is. You can say you want it because it's more money, it's more time, it's whatever. So I tell kids in their very first job, you applied for and were successful in a job that had a job description and it had an ideal attributes listed in it, right? You got the job.
Yeah.
You got the job. It's yours. That's
Yeah.
you. That is, at least at the beginning, what the company thinks they want from you. So you should be doing your own assessment of the plan to execute on what that is. So what is this job? And if you don't know what it means, you got hired into the job, you go and you seek clarity. Not high maintenance, by the way, and you don't get your parents involved. That's another thing aside I have to say. What you don't do is ever ask your parents to call your boss because you got a bad performance review.
Don't do that.
Because that happens. So you have promoted yourself into the role. You need to look at the role and say, what does the organization expect from me? They expected and wanted to hire a person with these attributes. I convinced them I have them. But do I really? Like on a score of 1 to 10, with 10 being like a perfectly capable analytical skills, what else do I need to do to fill the gap to get to where I want to go? And it could be I want to save enough money to go to Europe.
Yeah.
Well, then you got to mitigate getting fired because, by the way, junior level people in the organization are the first to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other say 2 other things because that's very complex, and that I encourage people to sit down and talk to somebody that was in their job last. So you took a job because someone probably got promoted because you're junior level. Go and talk to them about how they look back on themselves in the role responsibilities and the attributes. So you can get some ideas on how you might, continue to be into that role you've promoted yourself to.
Right on.
And 2 more things really quickly. I say there's this strange tendency now with entry-level positions to put an hourly wage on it. When I started my first job in 1990 as a pharmaceutical sales rep, I got a $38,400 salary. I didn't know what that was an hour.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me what was an hour.
Yeah.
So if you're going into any job at a university or the trade, trades is a little bit different because you have a clear deliverable and you have a clear wage.
Yeah.
But you need to not act like you're an hourly wage employee.
Yeah.
Like those old-fashioned punch card machines and things like that. If you're the first one, who's already packed your desk up and out the door by the time, people are just beginning to pack up. I picked my daughter up. She's on an internship at RBC, and I picked her up from the office maybe like 2 weeks ago, and she gets off at 4. So she was at the door at like 4:17 into my car, right? And I'm like, hazards, downtown Toronto. And I watched at least 17 people leave the office between 3:55 and when she came in the car. And
Yeah.
they are all supposed to finish at 4.
But you know what the response would be? I'm maintaining my work-life balance, or I need to get out early because I need to take care of my own mental health and I need to take care of my anxiety, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. Okay, good. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want I'm not suggesting any of this takes precedent over that type of thing.
Right.
Last thing, dress
Okay.
above your level. Dress one level above your level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a little bit harder today with business casual, but if your boss wears jeans and a blazer, like when he gets up from his desk and goes to a meeting,
Yep.
wear jeans and a blazer. Like,
Right.
roll up the sleeves, make it casual, but dress one. And I've been following that for 40 years, and I swear it's still true.
I love it, and I'll bring it back to something that you already mentioned that we talked about. You know, whether you get a performance review and you've been you're a seasoned vet and you've been in there for a while, and you get back your performance review and you're looking at the KPIs on this, right? And you have a couple of areas that you're not happy with. Well, maybe look at those areas and say to yourself, with a growth mindset, here's something that I could put in place just a little bit. And I think what you're saying too, Michelle, is that, you know, if we see something that's important to us, let's act on it. Let's ask. Let's talk about it. So that communication strategy is really, really important for young people, because I think a lot of young people very intimidated when they do start that first role.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about the situation facing young men, you know, being a product of their environment and their upbringing and, you know, their peer group. It's the same thing. We've asked kids to go into these employment circumstances, you know, they graduate when the majority of their ability to communicate about tough things, right? Missing deadlines or not getting things right or not actually developing at the level you need to be or where you are to be promoted.
Yeah.
They don't have expertise dealing with conflict, dealing with, you know, failing to meet people's expectations. Right? We've lawn-mowed away a lot of problems for our kids.
Yeah.
If you don't like your grade, you can go back and negotiate till this guy comes home. If you're going to miss an exam, you can miss an exam. And then all of a sudden you're dropped in corporate where nobody's going to spend that time with you.
Yeah.
Especially if you work for a publicly traded company.
Maybe that starts at home, you know, like if there's going to be no shortage of conflicts that happen at home. And maybe it's almost coaching your kids to dive into those conflicts and to talk about those conflicts. I think that's probably a piece that they need to do as well.
Yeah, and then you
Yeah.
hope their parents do that, right? Which brings us back to families and struggles.
That's right.
What do we do when things are tough and our emotions, like a lot of people just keep them in because it's too vulnerable to do anything else but. Or people
Absolutely.
yell and scream or drink too much.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you want to get better, you can't do that at work.
Yeah. Well, that could be another topic when we talk again down the road.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Michelle, for talking to me and the audience today. I learn a lot listening to you, and I think you have a wealth of experience. Corporately, you could speak to that. You could talk for hours about family life, and I think one of the real takeaways that I'm gonna think about, reflect on, is what are those practical pieces that I could take away that are going to make my life better, even if it's just a little bit? What are those actionable 3Ds that I could take away that's going to make things just a little bit better?
And
So
that's
I
all
want
it
to
has
thank
to
you.
be.
I want to thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I want to see
great.
people be happier and better.
Me
And,
too.
Yeah.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay.